welcome. It's nice to have all of you moms on here today. I'm very, very excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today. And it always morphs into whatever it's supposed to be. And I love that about our discussions. I just love that. Lindsey Bunting and I have been chatting. We've been talking about kind of the direction that this seems to be moving, and that's how things work. You start out and maybe you've got an idea of what you think is going to happen, and then it becomes what it's supposed to happen, as long as we stay out of the way and allow that to happen. So, and I also love that, and I know Linnell's just off for a sec, but I love that I can see all your faces. That's really nice. My husband teaches at a university here, and he was just saying that his one class that has 28 students, he had one on camera. And his class of like 16, I think he had two. So he said it's just so hard to talk or teach, especially teaching, right? Teaching to all these black screens. So it's just lovely to see your faces. I appreciate that. So nice. Okay, so Lindsey, do you want to share for a moment kind of some of our discussion, what we're kind of talking about this group? And I have no expectations, so whatever you're feeling.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I have my phone kind of set up funny, so I didn't know if it was blocking the microphone. Well, we just started talking after last week because I didn't realize that Marley, who was on there, she kind of oversees the Mothers of Influence groups, and so kind of gave us some tips about where our group could go as far as being mothers of influence. And to have a bigger reach, she suggested not narrowing it down to just a homeschool group, but kind of making sure that we don't just talk about homeschooling and talk about our influence as mothers, and just feeding and nurturing our hearts as women so that we can invite all ages, all different types of women to our groups, and that they'll feel welcome. They won't feel like they don't belong because we're all talking about homeschooling. So does that make sense?
Yeah. So any thought? Yeah. Go ahead.
No, you go. You go.
So it's funny because I don't see it as a strictly homeschooling group. I see it as a group of mothers of influence. I love that group. When I found that there actually existed a thing and it was called Mothers of Influence, I thought, well, this is perfect. I just love it. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then I got asked to be a guest speaker on this homeschooling conference last summer because a bunch of moms were kind of panicked because they'd been thrown into homeschooling, never thought about it before, but because of COVID and virtual learning and things like that, they were all of a sudden homeschooling their kids. And so I came on as a guest speaker, and we had such a wonderful discussion. It was really positive and enjoyable. And the moms, as you can understand, if you are in your early years of being home with your kids, or you just remember that time, they really wanted to keep meeting. And so I had just finished homeschooling my youngest child. And so I was the one that was kind of in an obvious position to take that on. So that's how this started. But like I said, it has kind of evolved and morphed, and I'm really quite happy with where it's gone. And I see it as a group of wonderful women connecting and having discussions about the things that are going on in our lives right now. And I think focusing in on our sphere of influence and what we're doing and learning and becoming, and how that is going to be and can be a positive influence on those around us. That's kind of what I'm thinking. I want to know how you feel about that. I want to know what you other moms think about that idea. Do you feel like that's so crazy different? Do you feel like it fits with where we are here, what you want? Okay.
I know for me, I'll just say,
yeah,
because I've done half homeschool and half public, because I treated the public school system as a salad bar. like they work for me, I don't work for it kind of thing. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. But to be honest, I found this group because I was tired of my Facebook feed being so negative, so ugh. And I thought there has to be good groups out there. There has to be, I want my feed, if I go on here, I want to be inspired and stuff. And so when I saw this group, I just thought, oh, women of influence, hey, this is great. You know, I just wanted to be inspired, and I'm a woman, I'm a daughter of God. I want to be around other people who are trying their best, really and truly, and inspire each other. And I've looked forward to every Friday. I missed last week's, but I've been looking forward to every Friday. It's kind of been my little treat at the end of the week, to be honest. And I personally have loved it. I feel so inspired and blessed and energized and everything by it. So that's just me personally.
Good. I love it. I love it. Anybody else want to share their thoughts or feelings?
Yeah, I'm the same way as Amy. I like, this is my favorite time the whole week. It like fuels me for the rest of the week. Like I just feel so like, yeah, ready to carry whatever we've talked about here and like let that, like we've talked about, like let that influence my home and my friends, and it just fills me with joy. So I'm able to share that with others. So yeah, like Lori was saying, I haven't really ever looked at this as a homeschool like support group, but I think when Marley was on here, she must have noticed we talked about that a few times. And so that's why she suggested it. But yeah, I've always considered this just something for me to like fill my heart so that, so that I'm good to go. That wasn't what I was going to say though. I was going to say something else. Now I've totally forgotten what I was going to say.
Okay, it'll come back.
I don't know.
It usually does. Sometimes it takes a little while. I was looking at the comments and it's funny because I wanted to ask that too. I was like, Kelly, you're in your closet. It's lovely. That's awesome. Do you have a desk kind of set up in your closet? Because I've seen that lately a little bit.
Yes, I love it. And it's quiet in here. So
Yeah.
See, there's my desk.
Oh, that is so nice.
Yes. But thank you for having me. Can I just ask a question while I've got it unmuted? So do you follow the Well-Educated Heart principles in this group? Is that what it's about? And I love that you're talking about this is more than homeschool. I think that's really neat. So I'm just kind of here, kind of seeing what it's about, but that's good to hear.
Yes, and we do. We follow Well-Educated Heart principles. I come with my books. We kind of study. We go over different things. Usually, at the beginning of the month, we hit whatever the Mothers University topic was for the month. So last week we did storytelling, and our discussion was about that. And then just our experiences, but we are touching on that well-educated heart. That kind of is the whole reason we are talking about this, is that we're talking about feeding and nurturing our hearts. So using those principles, and I absolutely love that. I feel like that's been such a blessing to realize that in my life, that's out there as a resource. And then I want to encourage moms that haven't found it yet to go there. Lindsey Bunting was my, she and one of my sister-in-laws, they both introduced it to me in my last years of homeschooling, and I was slow to respond. And so I try to be very encouraging with other moms and say, don't be slow, don't wait, get right into it, because it's such a blessing to have all of those resources and those principles. So, Lindsey, did you remember what you were going to say, Bunting?
Yeah, I think. If not, it's a new thought. I was just thinking, because I've invited my sister-in-law who public schools on here before for the outside thing, but I think that meeting, we were talking about homeschooling and how being outside connects with that, but for her, she just got what she wanted out of it. But I think she would have felt more like this was her people if we would have not talked about homeschool, like using it for homeschool as much. I don't know. But,
don't say the H word.
I would like
don't say the H word.
I know. I keep saying it over and over again as I'm talking about this, but it's so hard to disconnect, because when we do that H word, then it's like everything in your life helps you with that, and it's all connected.
Right.
But yeah, to help others feel more comfortable. So being able to invite my mother-in-law and sister-in-law and other friends on here and have them feel really comfortable, that we need to be careful about that. I also thought as we start branching out, like we've talked about, like this is a good jumping off point for some of you who, especially after things open up, you can have people in your home. This would be a good jumping off point to invite all different types of women that you know, to spread the influence into more groups and stuff. So
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that. And I want you to know, Lindsey and I talked also about the fact that even when things open up, and if some of you go and start your own groups, your own Mothers of Influence groups, so that you can meet in person in your areas and within your sphere of influence, we would love to keep this one going at least monthly, so that we have that connection with all of us that have become friends, and maybe, I don't know how we would actually do that. We talked about some ways and ideas, but for now we're staying like we are every week, because we just feel like the week wouldn't be the same without this opportunity to get together. So anyway, any other thoughts or input at this point?
I have a few thoughts.
Great.
So similar to what Lindsey said, I have wanted to invite a sister and a sister-in-law, particularly the one about grief and the one about balance, because I thought the topics would be really helpful to them. But when I mentioned to them that I was going to have this group, once they knew it was homeschooling friends, then they're like, oh, I don't homeschool, that's not for me. So I think it was a very insightful comment for Marley to make, that we should open it up. And so just now I'm thinking about a comment that Marlene recently made, where she said we tried to look for the similarities, or maybe it was somebody else, I don't know who it was, but we look for the similarities, we look for the principles that connect us, and then we can grow and build off of that. And so because homeschooling is such a small group of people, I do agree that when we focus so much on that, then a lot of people will feel left out. So then I tried to think about, okay, so what are the things that we would talk about instead, or how would we open our conversation to welcome more people? And so what comes to mind is just talking about principles that fill and fulfill us and our children as mothers, and not necessarily as homeschoolers, because all mothers need to teach, all mothers need to nurture, all mothers need to uplift and bless and inspire. And so that was that comment about what Marley said. And then also when I saw the topic for this week's discussion, I was really looking forward to it, because lately what's been on my mind is how can I share all the joy that I've learned and all the joy that I've felt from incorporating well-educated heart principles in my life with my closest friends and family. And I have a blog, a personal blog that I write on daily, but I want to kind of find, like, I don't know, not simplify, but just kind of figure out what's the meat of what I'm doing and what have changed in my life and what I've applied to bring this joy in order for other people to access that as well. And I haven't quite figured out what that is and how to be a light to others and show others so that they can partake as well.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Linnell. Thank you so much. You always have very insightful comments. And I think this is just a natural evolution for this group. Like I said, it was born out of a homeschooling group, mentoring moms, but it has evolved, and it's good to acknowledge that and to make sure that we are really opening up so that other moms, other women feel welcome here, and they know that it's a group of women discussing these principles and that they apply to all of us in whatever situation we are in our lives. And hopefully those that we invite will be patient with us and know that just like when you're in a group of a whole bunch of members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you have a few non-members there, eventually they kind of learn the language, because we have a hard time remembering that we're not all familiar with all those terms, but if our friends are patient with us, then I think that they'll come to this group and really find their place and know that they belong here as well. I wanted to, just before I forget this, just share with you this idea. And I think Ida does this, and she's not here yet. Hopefully she'll get to join us today. But Ida does this, and my sister-in-law, Kristen Gabbitas, does this with their little personal Well-Educated Heart or Mothers of Influence groups. They meet via Marco Polo. And so they're not all there having a discussion like we are right now, but they're all participating, and they can participate when they can, right? They can listen to the messages when it's convenient for them. They can share their thoughts, and that, they have got that back and forth. And so that's an idea. So maybe some of these people that you're not sure if they would feel comfortable right at first, maybe you could start a Marco Polo discussion with them and then invite them, to the group. And that'll give us a couple weeks to kind of figure out how we do this and make sure we're inclusive. But I think the overall feeling here is warmth and inclusion. And I think that they'll feel that. So anyway, continuing on, any other thoughts about that from any of the rest of you? And what do you think, Linnell? Does that do you maybe feel better about the idea about inviting others if we are moving forward in this more inclusive way, this just talking about mothers of influence?
Oh yeah, I'm always happy to invite. And then, I don't know, it's just sometimes if they know what it is.
Right.
So if we are making an effort to be inclusive and to be warm, which I always have felt included and warmth, but just knowing that the core group is experienced with homeschooling, I think once we invite others who don't homeschool and then they can bring in that perspective, then it will feel more like a diverse group.
Great. Okay, great. I appreciate that. And the focus always is in Well-Educated Heart, in TJ Ed, which we also talk about. We also bring in Charlotte Mason influences. All of that really focuses first on mom, on my learning, my education, my nourishment, feeding me so that I can feed those around me, including my children, right? And so if we're talking about nurturing, teaching, and training rather than homeschooling, I think that definitely will help people to feel more comfortable. Also, we want to be open to all ages and all stages of life, because my goodness, what an influence, what a great positive thing it would be to have the influence of some older mothers and grandmothers in our group, right? And single women and women who've never born a child but are still mothers. One of the talks I pulled up because I had just listened to this amazing podcast, but is the one by Sherry Dew, Are We Not All Mothers? I don't know if you recall that one, but that was October of 2001, I think. It doesn't say, but anyway, because we are all mothers, it doesn't matter whether we have born children or not. That principle of motherhood, that doctrine is very significant and important to remember, that we mother other people. It's in our nature to nurture. And so that, I think, kind of having that understanding about the word mothers, and Marlene talks about that too. They talk about that in Mothers of Influence, that they use mothers on purpose. And because I was talking to Lindsey about that earlier in the week and saying, oh, what if it were women of influence? But then I went back and reread and listened to things, and they chose mothers on purpose. So I love that, actually. I think that's a beautiful, really important thing to remember. I was going to look at she said, as daughters of our Heavenly Father and as daughters of Eve, we are all mothers. Eve was called the mother of all living before she ever bore children. So there's that very first example there. But we each have the responsibility to love and help lead those around us, especially the young people around us. But talked about it being important for us, because people are watching us, to fill our time and our minds with good things. It's important for them to see how we face uncertainty and temptation, where we find true joy, why modesty and femininity are hallmarks of righteous women. How will our young men and our young women learn those things if if there aren't women around, mothers around, to be modeling that for them. So I liked that. I liked that thought. Yes, Cassie, it is absolutely okay to share the recordings with other people. Yeah, you can invite anyone to share those, invite them to go to that YouTube channel, share the links with them. You said, just wanted to know if it's okay to share the recordings with other people. I've wanted to share the YouTube links with friends, but there are such personal and lovely stories and discussions that I wasn't sure what the rules were about passing that around. That's actually a good question, Cassie. I try to remember to say at the beginning of each of these that we do record these discussions and they are on the YouTube channel, so that if there are any of you who are not comfortable with that and would want like your comments or your face or something edited out, I can do that. So let me know, because I want to make sure you're all comfortable with that. I do set it up so that it's the person who is talking that is on screen the whole time, rather than the grid view, which I like to look at while we're chatting. So if you don't want to be on screen, you can black out yourself before you start talking. You could change your name if you don't want that on there, however you want to do, or say, Lori, I need you to edit that out. And as long as my son's around, I can do that. I'm supposed to learn how to do it myself too, but anyway, but yes, we try to share that with other moms, because there are moms who cannot get on at this time, but they also watch faithfully every week. They're just never on here with us. So I appreciate that question. So just so you know, the podcast I listened to this morning was on Latter-day Saint Women. It's a podcast channel that my sister-in-law shared with me. And the talk I listened to was this one. Is it backwards? Does it show it backwards? No. Okay. So it's The Immeasurable Influence of Women of Faith, Sherry Dew. It was really wonderful, really wonderful. She started out talking about the influence of her grandmother, who she spent a lot of significant time with. Her grandmother passed away when Sherry was just 11, and yet she is one of the most influential people in Sherry's life. So that tells you a little bit about the impact we have on those around us, even just in those first few years. And then the impact of her own mother and that incredible influence. And she said, these were women who called themselves ordinary women. She said, I see them as extraordinary women, but as far as how the world would measure, they are ordinary women. And that's us, but that phrase, by small and simple things are great things brought to pass, is very significant to me. And I found it is also to Lindsey, and we were talking about that. And I said, that keeps coming up for me. And I keep thinking that should be like a subtitle under this Teach Our Own, my little channel there with the recordings of our discussions. It should say, by small and simple things, so that we remember that. And then when I went back to Mothers of Influence to kind of refresh my mind about all of that, the little subheading under Mothers of Influence says, by small and simple things are great things brought to pass. So I thought, okay, we're on the right track. This is what we're supposed to be doing here. So, talking about this, how do you see in your life, real life examples of how the little things that you are doing in your life are having an influence on those around you? Because I know you see it. I know that you see it in your life. Who would like to share about that? Tasia, you're on.
Yes, it's been really interesting to see. So I have a 6, 7, 9-year-old. Those are all my sons. And then I have an 11-year-old girl. And as they get older, the older they get, the more I see myself in them. And especially when a younger brother gets hurt, the things that come out of their mouth are the exact same things that I say, like, use your words. It's okay. I'm so sorry that it hurts. I bet that hurts a lot. Like, validating them. That's been really cool. And on the flip side, there's also things that I say that I don't like. Oh, I wish you wouldn't say, you know what I mean? Things that I say or do that they catch on that aren't so great. And it just goes to show that they're watching and they're paying attention. I never had a lesson about, okay, here's what validation is. This is what it means. And this is why it's important. they just modeled the behavior that, you know, I had learned from books and from podcasts and things. So yeah, that's been really fun to see in my children.
I love that. I love that. And yeah, sadly, we get the good and the bad, right? They pick up on both. It'd be nice if there was a filter where they only got the good stuff, but I think they learn from both. Okay, Kayla, you're so polite. She raises her hand. I don't even know if I know how to do that. Okay.
I just saw it when I clicked
Yeah.
on more to check the chat. It's like, oh, you can raise your hand. So we actually have fallen out of practice with this, but maybe a year or two ago, sorry, I'm a mom of 6. I've got my 10-year-old and it goes down to 1. But we were having a lot of contention and just fighting, and you know, it was just not a very happy atmosphere in the home. And so I was just praying and pondering, and it's like, okay, how am I going to fix this problem? And it should have been like, you know, one of these big light bulb moments, but it was like, go read scriptures, have your kids read scriptures. So before we homeschool, I would sit my kids down and be like, 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes in your scriptures. And even if you're just like looking at pictures, just stare at the page for all I care. You know, just start reading your scriptures. And the more we did it, 5 minutes eventually turned into 15 and 20, and it just grew, and the atmosphere in our home changed. And I mean, small and simple things. It really does start with the small and simple.
I love it. I love it. Great. Thank you. And other moms? What are some ways that you're being an influence? Lindsay?
I don't know that I'm an influence, but just having this group, I feel like I had a really hard heart when I kind of stumbled on this one. No reason, just it happens, you know, life. And
Yeah.
just since then, I feel like my heart has been softening and reading the Well-Educated Heart. And my family can kind of tell, because now they're like, oh, Friday, what time's your call? It's at noon. For me, it's noon. Even this morning, my husband had a procedure done. He's like, are we going to get home in time for your call? And I'm like, it's fine. Family's more important. But he's like, no, it's fine. We'll just make sure you're there. And it just, I guess my heart softening is helping them notice how to soften their own hearts. And a quick example was yesterday, we were watching the Netflix show. It's Anne with an E, about Anne of Green Gables. We're only on episode 2. And the older sister, I can't even remember her name, she had already sent Anne away, and she wanted her back after she realized that she had made a mistake about the brooch. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. And at the end, when they ask her to be theirs, my little 9-year-old, she goes, why did it take her so long to just show Anne her heart? Why did it just take her so long to open her heart to her? And it hurt, because I feel like, how long did it take me to open my heart to certain things? How long is it going to take them? Because I know that their hearts are changing because I'm changing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So even if you're not trying to be a direct influence, like Tasia said, they're going to model what you do. Even if you're not like sitting down and saying, let's learn about this, let's learn about this subject or that subject, or just anything. They model everything, even the simplest things. And so I have all of you to thank for that, because I feel like I've made more friendships for good. And I really appreciate all of you.
You are so sweet, Lindsay. I can't imagine my life without you. It's really an interesting thing that this Zoom thing, that it's funny too, because I hear all these people saying it's so hard on Zoom and it's so hard to connect. And I'm saying, No, it's not. It's amazing. We have made so many very real and very significant connections on here. And I think Heavenly Father has been helping with that and leading us to each other and helping us because he knows that life is getting a little bit hairy and that there's a great work for women to do in this world, and that we need the support of each other and able to, in order to do that. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. So somebody else take over for a second.
Well, I was going to, here, everyone's coming into the kitchen. Let me
Of
walk
course.
away. You're leaving? Everyone's leaving? Okay. You guys? Okay. So, okay, I'm going to my room.
Well,
what I
Amy,
was going to say,
Amy, while you're moving, I just want to say, Lindsey, I love that you see that difference and that change in yourself and in your family. And I love that your family sees it. Your family doesn't want you to miss this discussion because they see the impact that it has on you. And I think that's really sweet, but it should show us, wow, we really do set the tone in our homes. You know, we really have an incredible amount of power, and we can use that power and influence for good or not, you know, and anyway, so I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, Amy.
yeah, well, I was going to kind of go along with that. You know, I'm in the stage where I've got, you know, teenage kids and a little bit older, right? And it's interesting with something like this with the mothers of influence, you know, just being an influence, is that it's a self-reflection, and sometimes it's a self-reflection that I maybe don't want to see, because you know, I'm looking at a couple of my kids and they're kind of lazy. They're laying around, they're not active, they're not doing anything. But then I'm thinking, have I been doing that? Yeah. You know, have I been doing that? Because they're seeing that I'm in my jammies all the time, you know, and then I'm seeing in their jammies, and it's just down to the little things that it's like, well, crap, I've got to look and see what I'm doing. And a lot of times I don't want to see what I'm doing, you know, or what I'm doing to myself, or, you know, or wrong. And it's hard. It's so dang hard. But I think if I were to stop for a minute, like today, I got dressed and washed my hair, right? Even my husband was like, oh my gosh, you have makeup on. And I'm thinking, well, maybe that's something I should do all the time, because showing my children, just by getting dressed and wanting to look nice, just by that, isn't being an example, right? Because they do see, and you don't, especially in the teenage years, you don't really get to see it until they're with somebody else, because then you get to hear, oh, your daughter's so, oh, she's great at this and she does this, and that's when you hear kind of your progress report, right? And so so there are, I think, some things that I think like, oh my, I need to you know, work on some stuff. And I think your children are a serious reflection of where you are in life, definitely. And then when they go to other people's homes and you hear it, I think that alone, again, like I said, is a report card of like, okay, am I doing the right thing? Am I on track? You know, am I moving forward? Am I doing what's right? Or do I need to work on something? And you know, you just don't want to screw up these kids, right? So yeah, anyway, that was my thought. But yeah.
Oh, that's really important to see our influence, to be aware of it, to show ourselves some grace so that we don't get discouraged by, you know, some of those negatives that, yeah, they're seeing. You know, we're not perfect people, but we are trying. And then find out from that reflection, what do I want to do? Is there something I want to change? Is there something I can change? Can I also, like I've said multiple times, give yourself a pat on the back for the things that you are doing that are good and positive, because nobody else is going to do it. But, or, you know, maybe us, we'll do it for each other. That's for sure. I wanted to just go back to this thing that I put on Instagram, which now I got to find it again. But I just put it on this morning, just before this sphere of influence little image. I loved it. It shows you in the middle. Outside of that is family, friends, and other groups. Then neighbors, schools, library, work, wherever it is that you're out, beyond that. Then state, country, the whole entire world. So that's your sphere of influence. And, for me, I can't see it being the whole entire world or my state or anything like that. But still, if you have an impact on a human being, and then they go out into their lives and they have a positive impact on people around them, that grows very fast. It's a very, very quick exponential growth there. Our influence can be measured in a lot of big ways, a lot bigger than we think. Lindsey put in here, we have been studying space, and it made me think that we as mothers are the sun. Yep. And our children do reflect our light right now. And we do pray we have solar powered them enough to keep shining when they aren't near us. I love that. I love that. And if we see that word mother being anyone that we nurture and nourish, then that powerful influence of us being kind of like the sun in a way can reach a lot further. Okay, so on this, there was a quote from Sister Dew that I included with this picture, and I loved it. Every woman has an orbit, she said. Every woman has an orbit. Every woman is in the position of having extraordinary influence on the individuals around her that can be life-changing. So that's anybody around you, anyone in your sphere of influence. So who are some of those people? Who are some of the people that are in your sphere of influence? Not just your children. Who else?
I have an example of someone else that wasn't my mom that had a really big impact on me. I was in 3rd grade and I had a really bad, or 4th grade, and a really bad class. They just were gross and super, I don't know. They were just a really bad class. And so we were always punished all together. And I just began to hate school because everyone was just crazy and gross. And I was really struggling, and I would go to primary and then to Sunday school. And my Sunday school teacher was Sister Moon. And she always had a lesson prepared. I could tell that she took time. And that's what got me through 4th grade. I would look forward to Sundays with Sister Moon. And I'm 33 and I still remember Sister Moon, and I don't remember all of her lessons, but I remember that she knew that the gospel was true. And I remember the feelings that I felt, and that I was learning, and I was feeling the Spirit. And I would get frustrated with my Sunday school class when they started to act out, because I was like, guys, I need this. So that's an example. She wasn't my mom. I only had her for a teacher for 1 year, but she made a huge impact on me that year. And ever since, I know that as a teacher of children, or really anyone in the church or in different areas, that you can make a big difference.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I always think of that phrase that says, you don't remember maybe what they said, but you remember how they made you feel. And that is so incredibly important. Anybody else? Who else do you have an influence over, or, is in those, what kind of people are in that circle, in those spheres?
I think social media has helped us be able to expand those spheres a lot more. I keep thinking of Ginny from 1,000 Hours Outside, and a worldwide impact she has made from her social media account. She just was taking her kids outside. We all do that. We all can do that. And she just started posting that she was going outside with her kids and that they were trying to be outside more. and the impact that has had on all of us here and everyone. I mean, she has people posting from all over the world that they're doing that. And so since then, I've been sharing some things that she posts on my social media account. And now I know at least a dozen friends and family of mine that are going outside, and they're doing the 1,000 hours outside challenge. And they're, you know, they may not be members of the church or homeschool moms or anything, but they're doing that because they just saw us doing it and how much fun we're having doing it. And now I get to see them posting pictures of them going outside. And it's just been kind of fun to see that, like, I did have a little bit of an influence on people outside of my home. And yeah, so I think of all the negatives that we have associated with social media, there's so much good and so much influence we have by using it.
And she's such a good one, because now my family would be like, how many hours do you have? And that's like their first question when they call, how many hours do you have? And we're like, it's been raining for weeks. I don't know. Not many.
No, I love it. I love it. And that's just a mom. She's a mom, and she would call herself ordinary. You know, Jenny is, you know, she talked with us as our guest speaker from her bathroom because that was the quiet place that she could find to get away. Yeah, very ordinary mom. And she has had a global influence and impact. I think that's so cool. And then you moms, like you said, Lindsey, you're sharing that with others around you, and you're impacting others and influencing them in this very positive way. I have no children that I'm doing this with, but I'm doing the 1,000 hours outside. I'm up to 41 hours, which is not, you know, but it's fine. And whatever I get in this year is going to be more than it would have been, because I'm trying to do that. And I love it. I love that she's had an influence on me. Okay, who else? Who else is in our sphere of influence? I mean, we've been talking about who influences us and who we're influencing. So you can go either way on this. Who else are in these circles of influence? Linnell.
One of my favorite things is to teach my children songs.
Mhm.
And we teach them very simply, just every day we play it. And I like to teach them primary songs from the children's songbook. And when I grew up in primary, I loved the songs so much. They teach such simple truth and doctrine. And I think it's really empowering. Even now as an adult, I think of those lyrics and it helps me. They're so simple, but true. I love them. So I teach my children the songs, and the influence it has had on others is amazing. One day we sang a song for our church meeting. We recorded it and then presented it. And later that day, I received a text from my stake president saying, that song was beautiful. It touched my heart. Thank you. And I don't know who shared it with my stake president. It was just my congregation that watched it, but it got shared. And so it's really amazing to think that I can influence my children. And children, when they sing, it's the sweetest. They're angelic when children sing. They add such a special spirit to it. And so when I love music and teach my children to love music and then teach them the songs, it's a really cool thing to see a 2-year-old know all the words to a song and to be able to sing it. And so all 4 of my kids in a music video, I'm playing the piano and we're able to sing it. It can touch so many lives. And it's the sweetest thing to know that I have a small influence in that I can be an example to my children, and they are the ones who are sharing this light, and so many people are touched by it.
That's a great example. And again, a small and simple thing, and it has had this very positive impact. I love it.
Can I jump in? I'm not going to show a video because I'm driving. But I just I couldn't look at who just talked, but you made me think of I had a teacher, and she was my 4th grade teacher, and then she was also my 7th grade and 8th grade teacher, and she taught me for language arts and social studies. One second, Tommy. And she was an amazing teacher, and she really taught me how to think and how to analyze, and she did and how to look at things from a different perspective. And I mean, that just, obviously she was a teacher and her students were her sphere of influence. But that the effect that she had on me is now affecting the choices in the education that my kids are going to have. They affect my conversations with my husband because he also had her as a teacher. And so we can talk about books that he's a grade older than I am, and books that we both read with her, and have some of the same discussions that we had in that class and dive deeper into them. And it's affected the way that I teach my children and how I look at the world, how I treat other people, because she taught me how to look at things from other people's perspectives and taught me how to understand different cultures. And so her sphere of influence was her students. One of her spheres of influence was her students. But that influence has just radiated across my entire life and throughout, the generations. Like I will be teaching my children differently because of the way she taught me. So that's all.
No, I love it. I love it. And that's just, a teacher doing her job as a teacher, but caring and making a difference. I remember this silly thing. One day I was on a long walk with my husband. It was before we were married, we were dating, and we knew it was going to be a couple hours walk. We had broken down and it was Sunday and we were anyway. And so we were just chatting, and we were talking about, we had passed somebody and smiled at them, and they looked really kind of down. I don't remember specifics about that, but we smiled at them, said something, pleasant, and they kind of seemed to respond a little bit to that. So then we were thinking about, okay, think about the influence that you have potentially on people around you. And, if you thought about that person walking past, and if you hadn't done anything and they had stayed feeling that kind of more discouraged, more, down kind of a feeling, and how that might have impacted the next people that they dealt with, or the people that they went home to, and how maybe a smile could have made a tiny little bit of a difference in how they responded to the next people, and how that influence could grow. That made me think about, I think it was Sister Craig, Michelle Craig, who is a member of my church and some of yours. And she spoke in a big meeting a few months ago and talked about how she had this feeling, this thought that she could improve her life by putting her phone away, not taking her phone out when she was standing in line. Do you remember that story, some of you? And so she was standing in line at the grocery store, started to pull her phone out, did not. And she noticed the man ahead of her in line. He was an elderly gentleman and he was buying a bunch of cat food. And she said, I just made, some little comment about, oh, I guess you have cats, or, something. But it initiated a conversation with him, and he brightened up and he shared with her that it was his birthday. And she wished him a happy birthday. And they had just this little tiny interaction. But what if she hadn't made that comment? What if she hadn't made that interaction? What if nobody that day had been in his circle of influence and had said happy birthday to him? What if nobody else even knew it was his birthday? And if she was that one point of contact, that one person that made him feel a little bit better, that brightened up his day a little bit, I think those things are significant. They're tiny. They're tiny little things for us to do, just do a little bit differently, but can have a huge impact on others around us. So now I want you to think about a tiny thing, something very small that someone did for you that really, now it has a huge impact on you, but for them, it might have been just really quite a simple thing. And you could also maybe be aware of something you did, because the person's reaction and response to you. You might know of a thing that was quite simple for you to do, but really had a big impact on somebody around you. A neighbor, a friend. Amy.
Well, you were kind of going where I've been thinking with everybody's sharing, because when you were asking about who's influenced you and stuff, and I think about it, and my list is long, really and truly. And as I think about it a little bit more, I think that the Lord placed them in my life to influence me, like the guy, you know, like the grocery store, like what you were saying. And I would have to think that he has a hand in that, because maybe those people are in my life to influence me to make me a better, or whatever it is I need at that moment, to be at the grocery store, to say hi, or to say hi to the people that look lonely or whatever on like you saw, you know what I mean? Like I just think he uses us as an extension, and that the people that, because the people that have come into my life that have influenced me have come into my life at various times where, if I think about it now, I needed it. You know, I needed that. I needed that uplift, or I needed to learn that thing right then and there, or I needed to have that friend in my life for a moment. And then she taught me, you know, whatever. She taught me how to tile. We're not friends anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever it is. And I just, it's kind of been like that. So the influence, like you have said, have been big and small. And that to me, I mean, not to be so churchy, but that to me, it just, I think shows that the Lord loves us, really, you know, that he truly loves us because of the influence of trying to make us better women.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
yes. And I think if we look for that, we can see his hand in our lives in those ways, and feel loved, and realize that we really are. And I like the word beloved, you know, to him. Amy, I was hoping Amy, my sister-in-law, would pop on here.
Yeah, no, I had a couple of just cute things that have happened in my life this week. One, on Sunday, I played the organ, and the chorister was talking to me, and she'd heard I was trying to do something. She's like, I think that's the best idea ever, and just know I'm praying for you. And it was super simple, but so sweet, especially because she's probably one of the most angelic people I know on the planet. So I'm like, hey, that's gonna help. We'll take it. But then just a cute thing in my office. So we take care of musical instruments at BYU. And we were selling off a bunch of stuff this week. And this cute little old man, he's probably 80 years old. He used to be a cop in Chicago, and he played trumpet when he was a kid. And now that he's retired, he's looking for one to buy so he could play again. And when he came in, I try to hire really friendly people who are very passionate about music. And he lingered in the office for probably half an hour, just talking to the different kids. And he was asking them questions, and they just really got to know him a little bit. And we sold him a trumpet, gave him a good deal because we just wanted to get rid of it. And a few days later, he sent us flowers and this note of like, thank you so much for helping me. Like, no one does that. So it was sweet, and it meant a lot to my student employees, because we had kind of a hard week where people weren't happy, not because we were doing anything wrong. It's stressful, and you know, environment this semester because of COVID, it just gets on people's nerves. So a little thing, he didn't have to send us flowers, we weren't expecting that, but they were just like, to see them perk up and feel appreciated, I'm like, that's awesome. So little things, they do matter.
Thank you for sharing that, Amy. I saw the picture of that. So if you go friend Amy on Facebook, you see that picture. It was really sweet. And in this kind of scrawling handwriting, you know, his little note. I thought that was very sweet. Okay. Other examples. Oh, Amy, did you have another thing you were going to share? Okay. Other examples, either side, people influenced you, you influenced Linnell.
Yeah, I have another example. I was having a really grumpy mom day. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. It was an awful morning. And usually those mornings end up really bad. Like the whole day, I'm a mess and nothing can pick me up. But my 5-year-old son decided to play a game. And I was just so upset that I didn't want to play his game. I said, no, I don't want to play your game. I have to do things. I started like telling him all of my problems. And his sweet little self had gone to do a game. So his game that he prepared was a scavenger hunt. And he made this sign full of hearts. This was well before Valentine's Day. This was like, I don't know, maybe in January. And he said, I love you, Mama. And he hid it in my end table. And the scavenger hunt was for me to find this. He ended up showing me exactly where it was. And so, the game didn't really matter, but it just melted my heart. And children are the sweetest examples, and his innocence lifted my spirits. It was something so simple that he did. It took him less than 5 minutes to draw it. But what I learned from that experience is that he influenced me in a really big way that day. The rest of the day, I was happy. How could I stay grumpy after that? And so he changed my mood immediately. I had to make that choice, but it was enough to brighten my day. The rest of the day was really good. And after that, for the rest of the week, I pondered his influence on me. I pondered what that meant for me and how it made such a big difference. And it really helped me to think about what can I do to do that for someone else. And then also on the flip side, what are those small things that I'm doing to ruin someone's day? What is that little thing that I do to make someone really upset and make them go the opposite way? So I keep this on my wall, and I remember it whenever I'm upset that my son loves me and he influenced me, and I can make a difference in someone else's life too.
I love that. That's so sweet. And I can totally imagine, a little person directing you to it, like the game just gets, because they're so excited for you to find it. That's really sweet. Okay. And this is a thing I think always when we're talking about children is I am always just humbled by the fact that the four spirits that came to our home agreed to let me practice on them being a mom. I just think, wow, I'm so sorry. Like, could we trade places? You would have done a much better job than me. And they're probably, I'd say possibly, but probably, most likely, and definitely in the case of mine, much more valiant spirits than me. If we're talking about us, once we're able to see each other, not with the constraints of this world, I'd be like, oh, sorry. I'm so sorry I got in the way, but, thank you for, being such an example to me. It's kind of amazing. So it helped me in my parenting to remember that we're actually on the same level. We just happen to agree to these different relationships anyway. Pretty amazing. Yeah, you do. You never know how much good you do. Is that film that's the mom that's having a frazzled, out of control, normal day?
It's the Gordon B. Hinckley, and he's just saying, you can't see good you do, which I would also slash or add influence that you do.
Yeah.
You just never know, because sometimes the influence, I think you just don't see it. You don't see it.
No.
You might smile at somebody or help them or whatever, you taught them something, but you don't get to see the flip side a lot of times of what you've done.
Right. Because how many times do people actually come back and say, thank you, that made a difference? And I'm not judging that. I'm just saying it doesn't happen that often. So how would you know? And the few times that it happens, you're thinking, wow, really? I didn't even, maybe it wasn't that huge of a thing, but you felt like, it was the right thing to do, or you wanted to do it. And it had this huge impact. Yeah, I think that's very sweet. And honestly, I truly think that some of the times, and maybe it's all the time, but I wish I could think of examples when I needed them, but I can't. But this happened about a week ago where something happened and I thought, surely that was magnified, because on my end of it, it was tiny. And on the other person's end of it, it was huge and incredibly impactful. And I thought, no, Heavenly Father must have stepped in there and magnified that effort to make it a much bigger thing. But wow, what if he can do that? I think that would help us to be a lot more confident in going out and doing and presenting our little humble measly offering, knowing that it could be magnified and made what it needs to be, right? So anyway, that was just a thought I had, and that has really opened up like a whole world of possibilities for me. I think, okay, I could say yes, Now think about this. Recently, the prophet of the Mormon church, right? The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has sent this message out into the world that we need to be better at being able to, or to all of us, but we need to be better at connecting with heaven, basically, and receiving inspiration, personal inspiration, through the Holy Ghost. And we do. We have seen in these past couple of years how there has been a message or a program or something presented, and then just months later, we needed that. And we've watched that happen multiple times. That should teach us that we are going to need to be very good communicators with heaven. We are going to really need to hone those skills so that we can receive very clearly and very directly the inspiration daily. And I don't know what it is that we as women are going to be called to do. I don't know if it's anything different than our daily influences on the people around us within our sphere. And I don't think it needs to be bigger than that. If you really think about that influence, it's huge, and it can be very impactful. Have you ever done a thing, contacted a person, and they said, "Oh, I can't believe that you just called me. I was just trying to find somebody who could, whatever the thing is, and you were available to do that thing for them." The Lord works through us to bless the lives of other people if we're willing. If we're willing to be those hands, he will let us do that and let us serve and bless and strengthen those around us. I would like to suggest that you could be a powerful influence in your neighborhood. Could we talk about that for a minute? Could we talk about the people who live next door to you or across the street from you? Some of you might be in neighborhoods where you've got a bunch of people that are maybe all in your same church, or, and some of us don't have that. We have very different types of people all around us, and different religions, and different cultures, and different jobs and hobbies, and different stages in life, and all those kind of things. So neighbors kind of give us this really wonderful mixed bag of people to interact with. So let's talk about our neighbors. How many of you know your neighbors? Interact with your neighbors. Have you had some positive influences? I could tell. I knew Kayla came on camera, so I thought, okay, Kayla's got something to share. Go ahead.
So I live in a very small town. I'm not from here. I actually grew up in Utah, Salt Lake City. Anyway, my husband is from here, and I don't know what it is about where I live, but all the people who are from here go out, marry someone, and bring them back. Anyway, I've gotten to know my neighbors pretty well, and we have a fairly good sized number of people in our church. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but there is a huge community of all sorts of different faiths. And just talking about influence and, how we impact our neighbors, my husband and I, we have always tried to open conversations of God, and because there's just a big need, not for everybody to know about Christ and who he is, and there's just such a need for that. So anyway, one of our neighbors had a couple friends move clear from Florida to Colorado here, and they were looking for a church to go to. They were searching for God, and this neighbor, because we had built such a good relationship with them, they were like, "Oh, well, you should check out Lance's church. Like, Anyway, these neighbors don't want anything to do with our church, you know, but because we're friends, it's just been this ongoing conversation for 5 some odd years. And her friends were just like, oh, okay. So they checked it out. They asked the missionaries to come over, and they actually were baptized into our church, because and it's like these sisters, they probably don't even attribute us, you know, like they don't even think of our influence and what we did in that, because it was like we didn't have a direct impact, but influence makes a full circle. And I mean, influencing neighbors, I mean, that's where you can start. So anyway.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you.
That's an awesome story. I'm sorry. That is so awesome. I love that.
The missionary mom speaking. I love it. Okay, other stories, other examples, other, you know, do you, even just the simple answer to the question, do you know your neighbor? Do you know your neighbors? How many of them, you know, how many neighbors are on your block, and how many of them do you know?
We've lived in our house. We live in a pretty typical like suburban neighborhood, and nobody around us are members of our church or anything. And so we've lived here 15 years, and I don't think that we do a whole lot for our neighbors, or like I wouldn't think that we were such a big influence in their lives at all. My kids are always outside. We're always out front. We talk to people who come by, but I've noticed the last several years that we just have like neighbors constantly coming over and bringing us stuff. They're like, well, we know you have a big family and you could really benefit from the oranges from our tree. Or, you know, we had this extra bit of birthday cake left over and we thought your kids would enjoy it. And we have, you know, they're just constantly coming over and like trying to serve us. And so I thought, like, why they wouldn't have done that if they hadn't have seen some sort of like love or light or something from us. You know, you tend to return stuff. So I just think my kids just being out there must have had some sort of influence in them, because we just have this really loving relationship with all of our neighbors. There's kind of like this little group of us right here, the 3 across the street and the 1 on each side of us. The 6 of us have all just kind of become this little block family, and we have nothing in common with any of them. None of them have kids at home, other than just that we're all neighbors and we just love each other and try to like consider what the other person might need. And we've started calling each other as people have gotten COVID and stuff around here. We call, do you need anything? Are we to bring anything over since you can't go anywhere? And checking on each other. And I don't know, I just think it's such a cool feeling to know that you have people right next door to you that care, and yeah, that you can influence each other in just such a simple way. You're not just by being you and just by being around.
Right. I love that. And you didn't have to really do anything. You were just living your life, and you had an influence and an impact on your neighbors. And that's very powerful. And I think, because so many times, I think in lots of Christian churches, there's so many, you know, but lots of, oh, thanks, Amy. Okay. It was good to have you here. In lots of Christian churches, we talk about ministering to our congregations and checking on each other. And we do all of that probably pretty well. But I think it's interesting and good to talk about, how do we do that with our neighbors who are not part of our church, but they're the people that we're the closest physically to. We are around them every day. And some people I was talking to about this were saying, yeah, but in today's society, we come onto our street, we drive down to the street, pull up into our driveway, push the little magic button, drive into the garage, close the door. We never see anybody outside. And so maybe you could start there. Maybe you could start just by going outside, being out in your front yard, going for walks. I think that this past year has enabled a lot of that, where it maybe wasn't happening before, but we've been home and our kids have been home, and maybe just us out on our own or with our spouses, you know, or out walking, or maybe, I don't know, just enjoying being home, trying to find something else to do. And so maybe we've had more opportunities to connect with neighbors. And I think that there's a lot of good to be had there. There's so much to learn from different people in different walks of life, different stages of life. I think one of the things that I'm going to insert a little homeschooling thing here. One of the things that has blessed my children's lives has been the fact that because we homeschooled them and they never were in a situation where it was, okay, I'm friends with everybody my age because we're all in first grade or we're all in fourth grade. They never even had that. They don't know what that's even like. And that was one of the things that was important to me, was encouraging multi-level, multi-age friends and, and all of this. And so like one of my daughters, one of her very best friends is a woman that I know well. She's the mother of one of my friends, and she is 94, I think. And my daughter is, how old is Kate? 21. And they give each other gifts, and they talk like they're giggling best, girlfriends. It's just funny to see them together, and it's wonderful. But we have friends of all different ages and all different types because we didn't know the boundaries, right? And so we could do that with ourselves. Don't have those boundaries. Don't create those boundaries in your head, because they really, truly don't have to exist. Just open up your heart and your world, your sphere of influence. But just start real close at home. Start with your neighbors. See what a difference you might make just by becoming more friendly with your neighbors, bringing in their trash can, taking up their newspaper. We did that in ours by starting a little neighborhood watch group, and we started that so that we could get to know our neighbors. And now we know everybody except for one family on our block. And they moved in during COVID, and I just didn't know how they would respond, but that's my excuse, because I need to make an effort there as well. But we have block parties, and but one of the things I learned is my neighbors, like Lindsay's, they love to come by and see my kids out in the yard, or see all of us. We've never had a gardener or a pool person because we wanted our kids to learn the value of work. And so we'd all be out there working, and they loved that. And so in fact, I had a neighbor say, I go home a different way than I used to, because one time I did, and I saw your kids outside. And so then I started going that way to see if they were outside. And so that's how she would drive home from work every day, was to pass by our house on purpose so she could see the kids outside. That's just so cute. So anyway, we just don't know how much of an influence we are having on our world, and as we start to just ask for opportunities, ask Heavenly Father, how can I be of influence today? What good could I do? I don't know, who could I help? What can I do? He will give us ideas. They may be within the walls of our own home, and that's wonderful, because that's a huge area of influence. It might be a little bit outside of the walls of your own home. It might be much bigger than that, but be open to that. Be open to being used as a tool to influence others for good. Any thoughts about that?
He's not our neighbor, but when we moved here, my husband had to find a new barber. And so he found this gentleman, and he's sleeved out tattoos. It's funny. But we just got to know him, and he has a son that's in college, and he only has the one, and he just loved our kids. He's like, always, bring him in, come when you get a haircut, bring everybody, bring the family. And he ended up getting sick. He's fine, but he got sick and he ended up in the hospital. And so we went to see him just to check on him. And he goes, you guys are the only ones that have come to see me. This was pre-COVID, obviously. He goes, you're the only ones that have come to see me. And so now when he sees my kids, he's like, just call me Uncle Justin. And so now it's months have passed, or even a year so far. And they're like, are we going to go see Uncle Justin this month and get haircuts? And but it's funny, he's not even family. And he doesn't ask about church or anything, but it's just such a weird connection that we're just friends. And he and my husband text back and forth, and every text it's, tell the family Uncle Justin said hi. And It's a funny little connection.
I love it. I mean, it's significant. Kelly, were you going to say something?
Yeah, this reminds me of the relationship that I've had with my kids' friends. So I have 6 kids, 7 to 23, and I have 4 boys, and they just have this like mass of friends. And I've never minded being in a house where they kind of hung out at, and that's kind of a rare thing. Most houses don't want the teenagers there. So it's a little bit of a sacrifice, and it's a grocery bill because they want to eat. But I've always wanted them to feel safe here, and that they could be here anytime they wanted. And it has been really neat to see them come by, even when my kids aren't here. Sometimes I would have a friend of one of my boys sitting on my couch doing his homework because he had some time between his college classes and he needed a safe place to land. And I've had kids show up saying, I'm not sure I'm supposed to be. It was on graduation day. He's all dressed up. He's like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be. I just thought that was really nice that he thought of me and our home, and knowing that it was a place that he would find help and be safe and always get something out of the fridge. So that's been something I could do without even going anywhere, really, except the store a lot.
Yeah.
It's been neat.
I love that. That's very impactful. I have a sister that plays that same role as you, and she was that home, and she was that refrigerator and pantry and extra fridge, and the kids would come and hang out there, and that was very important to them to have that safe place, because not all of their homes were that place for them. So what a wonderful blessing, what a wonderful thing that you've done by opening your home like that. So thanks for sharing that. I love that. Mary, were you going to share?
Yeah. So my mom was so good at reaching out and getting to know her neighbors. And I swear she knew everybody on the road, whether they were members of the same church or not. And I never really understood why. Part of it was she ran a preschool in our home until I was probably in 4th or 5th grade. And so she got to know, people's kids that way. But she always just was so loving and so kind. And every time somebody moved in, she'd take them cookies or bread or something like that. And it was such a culture change for me when I went on my mission to Southern California. And I'd knock on somebody's door and they would say no thanks. And I would ask them if they, if they thought any of their neighbors might be interested. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. And they were like, I don't know any of my neighbors. And it just shocked me. I was so like, how do you not know your neighbors? I mean, you all live right. I mean, you're in apartment complexes, like you all live right next to each other. And since I got married, once I got married, I was so determined that I was going to get to know my neighbors. And, some things happened in my family, and we ended up living with my in-laws, and my father-in-law had cancer, and we couldn't have other people in our house. And, so I lived in the current, with my in-laws for 2 years before I actually got to know any of my neighbors. And that was so strange to me, and it felt so lonely because I was so used to being able to go out front and anybody who walked past, I knew their name. And it's been hard getting back into that culture of getting to know people. But one of the things that, as I was thinking about this, I've had a hard time lately wondering how, I've been very, okay, I have to focus on my family. I have to focus on the influence I have on my family and get us kind of in order before I can go outside of my family and take care of other people, because, I have to take care of my family first. And just this whole conversation has made me realize that one of the greatest influences my mom had on me and on my siblings, talking to them, is the influence that she had on our neighbors and on the people around us. And that her example of that has had just as much of an impact on me as anything that she did inside our home. And I share this partially, because I felt like I should, but also partially because it was kind of just a revelation that I just barely had during this conversation that no, like I have to get out and make friends with other people and get to know my neighbors. Another thought that I had just really quickly, is my brother and I had a paper route when we were growing up, and my dad would always drive us because it was a big paper route. And there was a couple, they were probably about my parents' age, maybe a little older, and all their kids had left the house. And one day they just wrote us a note, and they left us a note that we picked up. And from that, we ended up having a correspondence. And now, years later, we haven't had that paper out in over 10 years, but we still go caroling to their house. Every now and then they'll drop off things for every Christmas. They still give my parents a basket with, gift cards for all of us, but it progressed from notes to, they would leave a bag of like goodies on their doorstep every Wednesday and Saturday for us to pick up when we dropped off their newspaper. And they have just become a second set of grandparents to the last half of my family since we got the paper out. And what an influence they've had on my life just because they wrote a note to their paper boy. Mm-hmm. So just thinking about that, it makes me realize like it really doesn't have to be that big a deal. We don't have to go knock on our neighbor's door and say, hey, like, you want to come over for dinner before we even know them? We can write a simple note to our paper boy if we have a paper boy, or just simple things like that to have an influence.
Yeah, Mary, thank you for sharing that. That's huge. And I'm excited to see, to hear from you later about your new relationships with your neighbors, because I can see you going out and fostering those now. And Linnell, you're making me hungry. I'm seeing all that bread. Yes, bread, like breadsticks or something.
Hot dog buns.
Oh, hot dog buns. Oh, okay. I knew it was something yummy. Okay, so continuing on just a little bit, talking more about this neighborhood thing. I had to be at a community meeting last night talking about emergency preparedness and creating an emergency preparedness plan. And I was thinking about my neighbors. And I was thinking, we ought to have some conversations. We ought to find out the people on my street who has what, who has a generator, who has extra water, who has a ham radio. I mean, I don't know. Why not find that out from the people on my street who live right next to me, who would be closest to me if, an emergency where we were home, right? I mean, we don't know what it's going to be like, but out here in California, our potentials our significant potentials are, earthquake, and then we have a dam up from us that we could, have that break, or power, significant power outages, things like that. So I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, oh, well, when COVID started, when everybody was shut down, and initially California's lockdowns were so strict, we were having texts go back and forth. Hey, how are you guys doing? Anybody need toilet paper? Ha ha ha. But seriously, I've got, 20 packages or something. But these conversations going back with, okay, this is what we've got. This is, or we can go to the store. What, does anybody need anything? That kind of, and I loved that. I thought, okay, we had the start. So we could have a reasonable excuse for having conversations with our neighbors just by opening it up with that discussion. Hey, would you want to have a discussion about emergency preparedness? Kind of find out. A lot of people don't know anything about it. And say you've got a neighbor who's a member of a church, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, for one, which is mine and a couple of the moms here. Or some of the other churches are also very interested in emergency preparedness. You could be a real blessing to the people in your neighborhood, because you're going to have some resources that maybe they don't have their hands on. But you could have some conversations about that. I don't know. It was just a thought I had, in a way that in today's world and climate, that might be a good conversation to have. be helpful in sharing what we know. So that's a very temporal thing, and not, you know, a warm and fuzzy one. But the warm and fuzzy ones are there too. We have, anytime I come in my house and I see goodies on the counter, I'm about 90% sure it came from one of my neighbors. Because they did the same thing like with Lindsey, because we had kids running around and they saw them all. When they have leftovers, like they've had a party and they have their family over, all the leftover stuff gets brought to my house because they're just sure that, you know, we'll be able to take care of it all. Or they'll have a gingerbread house making party and all the leftover candy comes to my house. Whatever it is, it comes here. And I have never minded that. I am okay with that. But we share, you know, we'll have extra mandarins or something, and, you know, from our tree out back, and we'll share that with them, or, you know, so we were just doing this sharing back and forth, but it's been very sweet. It's very nice to make those real connections. My daughter, one of my daughters just got married. And, but it was funny because one of the times her fiance was here visiting and he was going to be heading back to Idaho. My cute little neighbor says, call us before he leaves. I've got a care package or a travel package or something, you know, prepared for him. And she's just this darling lady. And so here was this bag, and it had snacks for Jamin and water for him and all kinds of little goodies in there for him, for his, you know, for his road trip home. And she's done that for my kids. When my son went on a mission, she crocheted this red flower for him that he was supposed to tie on his luggage, because in the Chinese culture, their family's Chinese, red means happiness and good fortune or something. And so for his mission, she wanted to send him off with that, you know. And then she'd also packed a whole pack of things she thought that he could use on his mission. Our neighbor across the street gave my son his bike for his mission, because aren't you guys Mormon, and is he going to go on a mission, or are you guys going to do that thing? And I said, yeah, in fact, you know, well, I've got a bike, a brand new bike. I won it in something. And I was wondering if he might want to use that for his mission. Yes, that would be wonderful. It was just so sweet. So you can make these very meaningful connections just by existing in your neighborhood, if you just make yourself a little more visible. So anyway, I hope I haven't beat to death that whole neighborhood idea, but I love it. I love that option for us to be that influence and receive that influence back from our neighbors. Give them the opportunity to have those connections. Okay, back to you.
I was just thinking, the point that we're here is to make sure that we are full of light, and our hearts have enough in it so that we can share. So I was looking at the Well-Educated Heart, the Mothers of Influence section, and I just love this little part. I was just going to read it. It's the deeper roots part of the Mothers of Influence section. It says, to put the world in order, we must first put the nation in order. To put the nation in order, we must first put the family in order. To put the family in order, we must first cultivate our personal life. We must first set our hearts right. And that's Confucius, is the quote. But I just thought, yeah, in order to do these things for our neighbors, we have to be a light, that when we go out, that what we're sharing is good. And I like that it focused on the family too. Like you said, people are attracted to you because of your family and the kids and the family unit. And we found the same to be true. So I think to serve our neighbors, like we have to focus on ourselves and making sure that our families are strong so that we are a light when we go out into the neighborhood.
Yeah, I love that. And we've had discussions here talking about filling our cup and the importance of doing that. We've got to remember that it's necessary.
Lots of people are going.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I share something really quick?
Sure. I know people have to go. Bye, Kayla.
So that just reminded me, I don't know if there are any gardeners out here, but one of my favorite plants is comfrey, and it's an herb, and it is known for having a taproot. So it has like one main root that goes really, really deep, and it is a nitrogen fixer. And nitrogen is so vital for all the other plants, for all plants to have. And a lot of times our soil lacks nitrogen. And so one of comfrey's jobs is it has the big taproot that goes way down deep in the ground, and it brings up nitrogen from way down deep in the ground and brings it up for the other plants that surround it. And it sends this nitrogen off through the roots. And then all the other plants can have that nitrogen, and then they create other nutrients, or they feed other microbiomes and things like that then make the roots of other plants stronger. And it's a chain effect, sweeping through our soil and all of the little living funguses and things that are in our soil. And that just reminded me of that we have to be the tap roots, bringing up the nitrogen to strengthen all of the people around us, so that they can then go out and strengthen the people around them. And anyway, weird little gardening
that's
metaphor,
great.
but
That's great. In fact, Lindsay and I thought we were going to talk about gardening this time too. So we didn't get that far, but I appreciate that, because I didn't know that about comfrey. So I'm going to add some of that to my garden beds. I appreciate that little tidbit. And I love the analogy. There's something also from Mothers of Influence. Lindsay, that's perfect that you shared that. And I wanted to share the other one. And this is, and I've shared this before with all of you, and I love it. I just love the visual of this. We have a sense of a safety net spreading over the earth. It's made up of homes where goodness and beauty are being nurtured and safeguarded in the hearts of the coming generations through art, music, poetry, and stories. We're gathering women to relearn the lost arts of cultivating hearts. That's that first one we're cultivating is our own. So I love that. Just love that quote, and love that reminder of what it is that we're doing here, and that we have the privilege and blessing of doing together as new friends. And I love that. I appreciate all of you. I'm so glad that you were all here. It's always fun to see new faces too. Thank you for being here. As I said, the recording will be up. It'll be on YouTube. Some days I get to it quickly, others it takes me a few days, but it'll get there. And you are more than welcome to share that link with friends, women that you believe would be blessed to have this association or this information. And we will meet again next Friday, same time, same link, and have another discussion together. Thank you so much, all of you, for all of your contributions. I sure appreciate it. Have a great, great weekend.